I should have known better. The moment I saw him standing in the doorway, I felt the air shift, thickening with an energy I couldn't ignore. My brother-in-law, Caleb, always had a certain charm about him, the kind that could light up a room and make anyone feel special. But tonight, something was different. The way his eyes lingered on me, the faint smile playing on his lips, it all felt deliberate. Mark, my husband, was away on a business trip again. He trusted Caleb to check in on me while he was gone, to keep me company. I wish he hadn't. It started innocently enough. Caleb came over for dinner, bringing a bottle of wine and a warm smile. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as easily as the wine. He made me laugh, something I hadn't done in weeks. Mark's absence had left me feeling lonely, invisible. Caleb saw me in a way my husband hadn't in years, and I hated how much I craved that attention. As the night went on, the atmosphere shifted. The space between us seemed smaller, the air charged with an unspoken tension. I told myself I was imagining it, that the wine was playing tricks on me. But then Caleb reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. It was such a simple gesture, but it sent a jolt through me. "You're amazing, you know that?" he said, his voice low and sincere. "Mark's lucky to have you." I looked away, my cheeks flushing. "You're too kind, Caleb, really." But he didn't let it go. "I mean it, you're incredible." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt a mix of emotions, flattered, confused, guilty. I loved my husband, didn't I? But Caleb made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in so long. The next time he came over, I tried to keep things casual. I wore a simple dress, nothing too revealing, and kept the conversation light. But Caleb had a way of breaking through my defenses. He'd laugh at my jokes, compliment my cooking, make me feel seen. It was intoxicating. One evening, as I was clearing the table, Caleb came up behind me. I could feel the heat of his body, the faint scent of his cologne. "You're working too hard," he said, his voice soft and teasing. "Let me help." Before I could respond, his hands were on mine, guiding them away from the dishes. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. "Caleb," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This isn't—" But he silenced me with a look. "Tell me you don't feel it too," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me, and I'll walk away right now." I couldn't say it. The truth was I did feel it. The connection, the pull, the undeniable chemistry. It was wrong, I knew that. But in that moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was how he made me feel. The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, tentative, as if testing the waters. But it quickly deepened, years of pent-up longing spilling out in that one forbidden act. My mind screamed at me to stop, to think of Mark, to think of the consequences. But my body refused to listen. That night was a blur of passion and guilt. I woke up the next morning with a heavy heart, the reality of what I'd done crashing down on me. Caleb was gone, but his presence lingered in every corner of the house, in every thought that crossed my mind. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. But the next time Caleb came over, the cycle repeated. We couldn't stay away from each other, no matter how much we tried. Each encounter was more intense than the last, the stakes higher, the guilt heavier. Then one day Mark came home early. I hadn't expected him, hadn't prepared for his arrival. Caleb was still at the house, his jacket draped over the back of a chair. Panic set in as Mark walked through the door, his eyes scanning the room. "Caleb," he said, surprised but pleased. "What are you doing here?" Caleb played it cool, his charm as effortless as ever. "Just checking in on her like you asked. Thought I'd stay for dinner." Mark smiled, oblivious to the tension between us. "Thanks, man. I appreciate it." The guilt was suffocating. I could barely look at Mark, let alone talk to him. Every word felt like a lie, every smile a betrayal. I knew I had to end things with Caleb, but the thought of losing him was unbearable. And then it happened. Mark found a text on my phone, a message from Caleb that left little room for interpretation. He confronted me that night, his voice shaking with anger and hurt. "How could you?" he demanded, his eyes filled with tears. "How could you do this to me?" I had no answer, no excuse. The truth was, I didn't even fully understand it myself. All I knew was that I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The fallout was devastating. Mark left, unable to look at me, let alone forgive me. Caleb disappeared as well, his charm no longer enough to mask the damage we'd done. I was left alone, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage, my life, my choices. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I'm haunted by the what-ifs. What if I'd pushed Caleb away that first night? What if I'd been stronger, more loyal, more faithful? But the past can't be changed, and the consequences of my actions are mine to bear. I'll never forget the way Caleb made me feel. Alive, desired, seen. But those fleeting moments of passion weren't worth the pain they caused. They weren't worth losing Mark, losing myself. And now, all I can do is try to pick up the pieces and move forward, knowing that some mistakes can't be undone.